You send a message, minutes pass, then more minutes. Nothing returns. At first, there is only silence, but under pressure, silence rarely remains empty. It gathers meaning. Perhaps you decide they must be in trouble, and it is now your responsibility to reach them, steady them, repair whatever has gone wrong. Perhaps the absence confirms what you secretly expected. You have been rejected, and the safest response is to withdraw before the rejection becomes explicit. Perhaps it becomes a challenge, a test of strength, one more battle in which you must prove that you cannot be dismissed. Or perhaps it becomes betrayal, evidence that someone has violated the order of things and must be confronted, corrected, brought back under control. The unanswered message has not changed, but you have. This is the uncanny moment fear hands you a script. Before you consciously decide what to do, you may already possess a mission, an enemy, a demanded sacrifice, and a predicted ending. The mission tells you what must happen. The enemy tells you who or what stands in the way. The sacrifice tells you what part of yourself must be abandoned. And the ending is already waiting. Exhaustion, disappearance, endless struggle, or lifeless control. 4 recurring roles can organize this drama: the rescuer, the exile, the hero, and the tyrant. These are not permanent personality types. They are not verdicts about who you are. They are temporary arrangements of perception and action, recognizable characters that can take command when danger, shame, uncertainty, or helplessness becomes difficult to bear. And each role offers something real. The rescuer offers purpose. The exile offers protection. The hero offers courage. The tyrant offers order. Fear does not choose these masks because they are useless. It chooses them because they simplify the scene. They reduce uncertainty. They make action possible. But here is the cost. What simplifies danger can also imprison imagination. Once the role has assigned the cast, only certain responses appear reasonable. Care becomes intervention. Discernment becomes retreat. Courage becomes combat. Leadership becomes command. You are not merely feeling fear. You are becoming someone whose ending has already been written. So the revealing question is not only, what am I feeling? It is, who do I become when I feel this? We will learn to recognize each role by its command, its enemy, its sacrifice, its protective gift, its shadow, and its predictable ending. More importantly, we will ask whether you can notice the script before performing the action that completes it. Because if the role is not the whole self, then something deeper must be entering the scene, narrowing perception, and speaking as though it were you. The deeper force is not another personality hiding inside you. It is better understood as a complex, a charged cluster of memory, feeling, expectation, and defensive impulse that can temporarily organize what you notice, what you fear, and what you believe must happen next. A complex may contain old humiliations, unfinished grief, remembered danger, bodily tension, and conclusions formed long before the present moment. When something touches that cluster, the past does not merely return as recollection, it becomes a lens. The current situation is selected, arranged, and interpreted through its emotional gravity. This helps explain why the same person can become protective in one conflict, absent in another, combative in a third, and controlling in a fourth. You are not revealing 4 permanent identities. Different situations are activating different organizations of experience. But a complex needs a form. It needs a story large enough to make its urgency intelligible. This is where the archetypal role appears. The charged material says, something is wrong. The larger pattern answers, then someone must save, flee, conquer, or control. Confusion becomes drama. Anxiety becomes duty. Ambiguity becomes a moral command. The role should not be confused with the persona. The role supplies the underlying drama. The persona supplies the socially recognizable face through which you perform it. A rescuing drama may wear the persona of the endlessly generous friend. An exiling drama may appear as dignified independence. A heroic drama may present itself as relentless excellence. A tyrannical drama may hide behind efficiency, standards, or responsibility. The face may be admired. The compulsion beneath it may remain unseen. This distinction matters because activation changes selection. Details that do not serve the pattern lose intensity. A pause becomes suspicious, while years of loyalty recede. One sign of distress becomes vivid, while another person's competence disappears. A disagreement dominates awareness, while every gesture of cooperation becomes strangely difficult to remember. Nothing supernatural is required, yet the experience can feel uncanny because the interpretation arrives with authority. It does not announce itself as one possible reading. It declares itself necessity. That is the danger. You are not discovering your permanent essence. You are witnessing a partial pattern claiming the authority of the whole. Jungian language can offer a powerful map for recognizing this inner drama, but a resonant or popular map is not proof, and it is not a diagnosis. Its value lies in whether it helps you observe more honestly and choose more responsibly. So whenever a role begins to harden, ask 4 questions. What is the command? Who or what has been assigned as the enemy? What part of me must be sacrificed to obey? What ending already feels inevitable? Hold those questions close. We will carry them through every role, and we begin with the one most easily mistaken for virtue. The moment another person's distress becomes an irresistible demand that you must be the one to save them. You notice the strain in someone's voice, the unfinished task, the silence behind a polite answer. Before they ask, your mind is already moving. What can you fix? What burden can you absorb? What must you rearrange so they will be all right? This responsiveness may look like pure generosity. Often, part of it is. You may possess genuine sensitivity, practical intelligence, and the ability to remain present when others turn away. You see what is needed. You know how to act. These are not defects to be cured. But watch what happens when action no longer feels chosen. The rescuer's command is simple: make this better. Its enemy is helplessness, the unbearable possibility that pain may remain, that another person may choose differently, that no intervention can guarantee relief. And when help is resisted, a second enemy can appear: perceived ingratitude. After everything you offered, how could they refuse, relapse, disagree, or fail to recognize your devotion? The demanded sacrifice is your own need and limitation. You must not be tired. You must not require care. You must not admit uncertainty, resentment, or the wish to be left alone. To remain the reliable one, you abandon the right to be finite. Now the hidden bargain comes into view. If you can become necessary, perhaps you cannot be discarded. If you can repair the crisis, perhaps you will not have to feel powerless. If another person depends on you, perhaps your place in their life will feel secure. This is where care acquires a shadow. The other person's recovery may be desired consciously, yet feared beneath the surface, because their independence threatens the role that made you valuable. Support becomes surveillance. Generosity begins to carry an invisible invoice. The rescued person must improve enough to justify your effort, but not become so capable that you are no longer needed. Then the ending arrives. You overextend. Your own life contracts around someone else's emergency. Exhaustion becomes resentment. Resentment becomes disappointment. Disappointment becomes proof that people take too much and give too little. And because the deeper fear remains untouched, you may soon discover another crisis, another wounded person, another opportunity to become indispensable. The problem is not that you care too deeply. The problem is that fear may have converted care into a compulsory identity. Chosen care can listen, offer, and respect refusal. It can recognize another person's agency and your own limits. Rescue cannot easily do this, because stepping back feels like moral failure or like becoming nobody. And when your help fails or is refused, notice the sudden reversal. The person who could not stop approaching may decide never to reach again. The indispensable presence begins to disappear. Disappearance does not always begin with a dramatic rejection. Sometimes it begins with a sentence that sounds slightly colder than expected. An invitation receives no reply. A small criticism lands with unusual force. Nothing has been decided openly, yet something in you has already received the verdict. So you become difficult to reach. You answer less. You stop offering what mattered to you. You tell yourself that solitude is cleaner than uncertainty, that detachment is dignity, that leaving was your preference all along. This is the exile's command. Leave before you are cast out. Its enemy is exposure the moment your desire, tenderness, or need becomes visible enough to be refused. Humiliation feels close behind. If others see how much belonging matters, they acquire the power to deny it. Withdrawal promises to remove that power. You cannot be abandoned, the role insists, if you make the departure first. And this strategy may contain real intelligence. There may have been situations in which retreat preserved dignity, prevented further injury, or reduced immediate harm. The capacity to step away can be an act of discernment. Distance is not always avoidance. But when fear takes command, the sacrifice becomes immense. You surrender your voice before anyone can dismiss it. You surrender belonging before anyone can confirm it. Most painfully, you surrender corrective experience, the possibility that this person, this conversation, this community, or this moment may not repeat what came before. The exile's protective gift is independence. Its shadow is certainty. From a distance, rejection never has to be tested. No one is allowed close enough to surprise you, repair a misunderstanding, clarify an intention, or remain after seeing what you feared would drive them away. The expectation is protected from contradiction. What feels like freedom may become a sealed conclusion. Then the ending unfolds with terrible precision. Your silence creates confusion. Confusion creates hesitation. Hesitation widens the distance. The growing distance becomes loneliness, and loneliness appears to prove what the role believed from the beginning. You were never truly wanted there. But notice what has happened. The feared outcome was not simply discovered. Your protection helped produce it. You are not essentially an outsider. Under threat, you may enter a story in which exclusion has already been decided. That distinction matters. An identity feels permanent. A state can be examined. A destiny must be endured. An interpretation can be tested. The question is whether you can remain present long enough for reality to differ from expectation. Can you speak before silence speaks for you? Can you tolerate uncertainty without turning it into banishment? Can you let another person answer a question fear has already closed? And if vanishing becomes unbearable, another reversal may begin. The wish to escape every judgment can harden into a determination to defeat judgment altogether, to become so capable, so accomplished, so undeniable, that no one can ever overlook you again. The exile disappears. The hero enters, already searching for the next trial. Now a setback no longer remains proportionate to the moment. A failed attempt, a closed door, an unexpected delay, each begins to feel like a verdict, waiting to be overturned. You do not simply want to succeed. You need victory to establish that you are stronger than what once made you feel powerless. The hero's command is, overcome at any cost. Its enemy is defeat, but defeat quickly acquires many faces. Weakness becomes dangerous. Dependence becomes shameful. An ordinary life begins to resemble insignificance. Even uncertainty can feel like an opponent, because it refuses to confirm that your effort will make you worthy, safe, or impossible to dismiss. The demanded sacrifice is rest, dependence, and ordinary humanity. You must always be advancing, enduring, becoming. You must conceal fatigue, because fatigue resembles surrender. You must decline support, because receiving it threatens the story that you prevailed alone. There is no room to be confused, unfinished, or simply enough without another conquest. Yet the hero carries a genuine gift. You can persist where others retreat. You can discipline impulse, confront difficulty, and act despite fear. This is not vanity. It is a real capacity for courage. But courage develops a shadow when struggle becomes the only evidence of value. This shadow is inflation. The role expands until every obstacle appears worthy of battle, and every battle appears central to destiny. Disagreement becomes opposition. Cooperation feels like compromise. Help arrives as an insult, because accepting it would mean you were never the solitary victor the story required. Then, success itself becomes dangerous. One achievement brings relief, but only briefly. The triumph must be repeated, then exceeded. The next test must be harder, more visible, more decisive. Exhaustion is hidden behind discipline. Peace begins to feel empty. Without an adversary, a deadline, or an impossible height to reach, you may wonder who you are. This is the hero's predictable ending, not defeat, but a war that victory cannot end. Ask the 4 questions. What is commanding you? What has been made the enemy? Which human need must be disowned? What conclusion are you preparing to manufacture? If the answers are triumph, weakness, dependence, and another battle, you may not be choosing a challenge. The heroic role may be choosing one for you. Mature courage is not the absence of limitation. It is the strength to meet limitation without turning it into disgrace. Sometimes courage advances. Sometimes it accepts help. Sometimes it rests before the body forces surrender. And sometimes it refuses a battle that exists only to preserve the identity of the fighter. But when the hero cannot tolerate an unconquered world, courage loses its capacity for dialogue. The mission changes. It is no longer enough to withstand uncertainty. Uncertainty itself must be eliminated. The hero who cannot end the war begins to demand command. Command begins where conquest ends. You tighten a rule that once allowed judgment. You correct every detail because variation now feels like decay. You question loyalty, monitor tone, demand explanations, and treat disagreement not as information, but as dangerous disobedience. The scale may be ordinary, the governing impulse is not. The tyrant's command is, control the field. Its enemy is uncertainty, especially when uncertainty takes the form of another person's independent will, a delayed decision, an unapproved choice. A boundary you did not establish each can register as defiance. The role cannot easily distinguish what is unpredictable from what is hostile. If you cannot command it, you may begin to believe it threatens you. Beneath this behavior lies a protective logic. If nothing escapes your direction, nothing can arrive unexpectedly. If every response can be anticipated, perhaps you will never again be caught unprepared, embarrassed, betrayed, or powerless. Control promises more than order. It promises immunity from surprise. And here, too, there is a usable gift. You may be able to decide under pressure, establish boundaries, create structure, and protect what genuinely requires protection. These capacities matter. Firmness is not tyranny. Leadership can set limits while remaining answerable, receptive, and capable of revision. Domination cannot. The tyrant's demanded sacrifice is reciprocity, tenderness, and trust. Reciprocity is dangerous because it shares authority. Tenderness is dangerous because it reveals what can be wounded. Trust is dangerous because it allows another person to act beyond supervision. So relationship is reduced to arrangement. One person defines reality, the others learn to comply. But compliance is not loyalty. It cannot guarantee intimacy. It cannot create inner safety. Coercion may secure the visible behavior while destroying the conditions that make honesty possible. People become careful rather than close. They conceal what will be punished, say what will end the interrogation, or rebel simply to recover ownership of themselves. Some remain physically present while withdrawing inwardly. Others leave. The resulting isolation then appears to confirm the tyrant's suspicion. People are deceptive, disorder is everywhere, and even greater control was necessary. This is the predictable ending. The defense manufactures the threat it expected. Ask the 4 questions again. What commands you? What has become the enemy? What must be sacrificed? What conclusion are you helping create? If the answers are control, uncertainty, mutual trust, and eventual betrayal, the pattern is visible. Fear may explain the demand for domination. It does not excuse the harm. And recognizing this role does not mean declaring yourself a tyrant. It means becoming accountable for the moment structure turns into possession, protection turns into coercion, and another person becomes an object inside your private necessity. The rescuer approaches, the exile retreats, the hero attacks, and the tyrant commands. 4 different movements, yet each narrows reality, provokes a response, and finds its expectation waiting at the end. What changes when you place the 4 portraits beside one another? Their gestures differ, but each requires a particular world. The rescuer needs someone endangered. The exile anticipates someone rejecting. The hero requires an obstacle. The tyrant detects a rival to command. Before the other person has fully appeared, fear has prepared a part for them. This is where projection becomes a useful possibility, not a verdict, but a question. What if the helplessness you cannot bear in yourself becomes the helpless person you must manage? What if disowned aggression is encountered everywhere as hostility? What if forbidden dependence makes every request feel invasive? or unacknowledged uncertainty makes another person's freedom look dangerous. Projection does not mean nothing is happening outside you. It means that what you cannot recognize within may become unusually vivid without. The role then encounters other people less as complex beings and more as carriers of whatever it needs to resist. And you do not remain in one mask. Roles migrate, sometimes within a single conflict. The rescuer whose help is refused may become controlling, insisting that care gives them authority. The exile may return as the hero, determined to become too formidable to reject. The exhausted hero may suddenly demand rescue, longing for someone else to carry what relentless striving has made unbearable. These are not 4 fixed kinds of person. They are 4 attempts to escape intolerable vulnerability. Now the shared sequence becomes visible. Something activates fear. Attention contracts around selected details. The role distributes parts: victim, rejecter, adversary, dissenter. Your behavior then pressures others to answer those parts. They may become dependent beneath constant intervention, distant beneath anticipated rejection, defensive beneath combat, secretive beneath control. Their response is received as evidence that the original interpretation was correct. The cycle closes. Return to the unanswered message. The fact remains spare. No reply has arrived, but the rescuer edits the silence into danger and begins intervening. The exile edits it into dismissal and withdraws. The hero edits it into a test and escalates. The tyrant edits it into defiance and demands an account. 4 versions of one ambiguous event, each producing a different pressure, each increasing the likelihood of the response it fears. Here is the confrontation. The role may not have merely predicted the ending. Through selective interpretation and repeated action, it may have participated in creating it. What you call fate may sometimes be a pattern that has become skilled at recruiting its own evidence. But this recognition must not become another tyranny. Some dangers are real, some refusals are cruel, some conflicts are not projections, and not every injury is self-created. The purpose of this lens is not to blame you for what others choose or to explain away genuine harm. It is to discover where your participation begins, because that is where freedom becomes possible. Once you can see the casting, the pressure, and the confirmation, the ending is no longer inevitable. A role is active, but something in you is noticing it, and the one who notices is already more spacious than the mask. The first movement is grammatical, but its effect is psychological. Instead of saying, "I am the exile," say, "The exile pattern is active in me now." Instead of, "I am the rescuer," say, "Something in me is trying to secure safety by becoming necessary." The same shift applies to the hero and the tyrant. You are not denying their presence. You are placing them inside a personality larger than their command. This is disidentification. It is not suppression. It does not require you to silence fear, dismiss intuition, or perform calmness while danger approaches. The role may be carrying a valid warning. Someone may indeed be unreliable. A boundary may truly have been crossed. A crisis may require action. Separation simply means the warning must be examined before it is granted complete authority. Nor does distance become self-acquittal. If fear speaks through control, withdrawal, combat, or unwanted intervention, you remain responsible for what you do. A complex can explain why an action felt necessary. It cannot erase its consequences. You can meet the frightened part with compassion while answering honestly for the behavior it produced. Now return to the 4 questions. What is the command? Who has been assigned the enemy role? What part of you must be sacrificed? What ending is already assumed? These questions reveal the structure of the script, but a 5th question creates an opening. What fact, capacity, or possible response has this role made difficult to perceive? Perhaps the rescuer cannot perceive another person's competence. Perhaps the exile cannot perceive evidence of welcome. Perhaps the hero cannot perceive the dignity of receiving help. Perhaps the tyrant cannot perceive that dialogue may protect what force would destroy. The excluded possibility is often where flexibility begins. You may also notice dream figures, recurring images, or coincidences that strike you with unusual force. Let them prompt inquiry, not certainty. Ask what they evoke, what conflict they resemble, what neglected possibility they bring to attention. Do not treat them as proof. prediction, diagnosis, or supernatural confirmation. Resonance can deepen reflection. It cannot relieve you of judgment. This is one direction of individuation, not finding the single role that finally defines you, but developing a relationship with several inner possibilities. Care can speak without becoming rescue. Independence can speak without becoming disappearance. Courage can speak without demanding conquest. Order can speak without becoming domination. No partial pattern is permitted to impersonate the whole self. And the first sign of separation is surprisingly modest. Curiosity becomes possible before certainty has fully vanished. You can feel the command and still ask whether it is true. You can hear the role as a messenger without obeying it as a sovereign. That pause is not yet the new choice, but it is the space from which a new choice can be made. The space opens in reflection, but freedom depends on recognizing it while the moment is still alive. Before the message is sent, before the door closes, before the demand becomes an ultimatum, there is a threshold. Learn its signals. Your body may surge forward or go suddenly cold. Your language may become absolute, always, never, must, impossible. Moral certainty may arrive faster than the facts. Urgency is not proof that you are wrong. It is evidence that perception may be narrowing. First, notice that threshold, then name the movement provisionally. Rescue is active, exile is active, heroic battle is active, control is active. This language matters because it describes what is happening without converting it into who you are. Next, map the script. What must I do? Who or what has become the enemy? What human capacity am I being asked to abandon? What ending have I already predicted? Do this before arguing with the emotion. Fear does not need to be humiliated. It needs to be made visible. Then test the scene. Separate what you can observe from what the role has added. What was actually said? What action occurred? What remains unknown? What evidence would change your conclusion? If no possible evidence could change it, you are no longer investigating reality. You are defending a verdict. This does not mean danger is imaginary. A threat may be genuine, an injury unmistakable, a limit necessary. The question is whether the facts require this particular response or whether fear has smuggled compulsion into discernment. Imagine that someone changes an important shared plan without consulting you. Your chest tightens. Within seconds, rescue wants to repair every consequence. Exile wants to withdraw cooperation. The hero wants to win the argument, and control wants to issue terms. Pause before sending any of those responses. Recover what each role excludes. If rescue is active, ask for consent and state your limit instead of taking over. If exile is active, risk one honest sentence before retreating. If heroic battle is active, permit assistance, uncertainty, or rest. If control is active, establish what you will and will not participate in without commandeering the other person's choice. Now choose the smallest reversible action that increases information. Ask what led to the change. State its impact without assigning motive. Request time before deciding. Propose one next step that can be revised. The aim is not timidity. It is to avoid performing the action that guarantees the old conclusion before reality has had a chance to answer. This sequence notice, name, map, test, recover, choose, can travel with you through conflict, ambition, rejection, and crisis. It will not eliminate fear. It will prevent fear from becoming your only intelligence. Peace, then, is not passivity, perfection, or permanent calm. It is sufficient inner room to draw from more than one capacity. You may protect, step away, strive, or set a firm limit. But now the response is proportionate, accountable, and chosen. Freedom is not the disappearance of the impulse. It is the arrival of another possibility before the familiar ending is secured. The wider choice reveals what the roles concealed. You do not need to destroy these capacities in order to be free. You can care without making yourself indispensable. You can seek solitude without turning distance into banishment. You can act courageously without requiring another war. You can exercise authority without reducing relationship to obedience. Each role carries something human and necessary. The rescuer carries responsiveness. The exile carries independence. The hero carries endurance. The tyrant carries the power to establish order. Integration does not reject these gifts. It releases them from the commands that distorted them. A capacity may serve the personality. It must not seize the personality and speak as though no other response exists. At the beginning, the frightening question was not only what you feel, but who you become when fear takes hold. Now, that question can be revised. An ancient script may still arrive quickly. It may present its enemy, demand its sacrifice, and announce its ending before you have examined the scene. But recognition changes the sequence. What is recognized does not have to become inevitable. And recognition is not innocence. Being larger than the role does not erase what you did while obeying it. If you intruded, withdrew, attacked, or controlled, freedom includes repair. It includes hearing the impact, restoring another person's agency where possible, and accepting consequences without hiding behind psychological language. Compassion explains the frightened movement. Responsibility answers for its effects. So stop asking, which role am I? No single role can contain you. Ask instead, which role is active now? What is it trying to protect? What fuller response is available to me? That is the work, not finding the perfect mask, but remaining in relationship with every capacity without surrendering your entire face to any one of them. When the next fearful moment comes, you may still feel the old command, yet you can pause, recognize its protection, answer for your choices, and draw upon more of yourself. If you want a sentence to carry into that moment, let it be this: I can notice the role without becoming it.